Hello and welcome to Graceful Connections. I'm Sophie Bidard, your host on this journey to gracefully reach for the stars, an adventure of exploration, discovery, healing, liberation, growth, and truthful expression. I'm so grateful that you've chosen to join us today, bringing your unique energy that pours into our circle of connection. Your presence here honors the calling within you to upgrade your subtle bodies with Arcturian frequencies, which is what our guest, Jane Ang, will be sharing with us about today, and it's going to be fascinating for sure. So let's begin. Take a moment to let go of anything that doesn't serve this present moment. With each breath, feel yourself arriving more fully here. As we set our intention, may all that flows within our sacred space, be it words, vibrations, energies, serve the highest evolution of our souls and extend outward in service to all. I invite you to open your heart and your mind to receive all the brilliance that awaits. Activating your connection to the new Earth crystalline grid and to the galactic center, the center of truth. You are perfectly held, both grounded and lifted. You are safe, relaxed, ready, and open to receive. Now I'm calling the orb of grace from the heart of the universe and placing the orb of grace around our gathering, each and every one of us. That we be held in this orb of grace and infused with grace all along our time together. As grace permeates our field, it harmonizes and magnifies all that seeks alignment and illuminates all that longs for expression in accordance with divine will and the order of grace. And breathe. Beautiful. Within the Orb of Grace, I'm delighted to welcome our wonderful expert speaker, Jane Ang. It is such a blessing to have you with us today again. Jane, welcome.
Hi, Sophie. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us in the Orb of Grace. So everyone, our time together with Jane today is dedicated to exploring the importance of subtle body building and ways to achieve this. And Jean will also take questions and mini healing requests, which will be answered with short transmissions of Arcturian frequencies that benefit everyone in the audience. So to ask a question or request a mini healing, press *2 on your phone or click raise hand on the web to come on the line with Jean, or use the Q&A box on the webcast to briefly describe your question or your healing request. And finally, we'll conclude with an Arcturian transmission called Enhancing the Three Anchors of the Astral Body, allowing everyone to directly experience the energies that rapidly open and develop the head, heart, and Harat centers. For now, let's dive into our fascinating topic of the subtle body building. And I'd like to begin with asking you, Jean, why is it crucial to engage in conscious development of our subtle bodies at this time?
This term subtle bodybuilding is something that I learned in a meditation school started by Samuel Sagan called Clair Vision. He coined that term, And then later on, I studied with Dr. Robert Gilbert of the Vesica Institute, who in the 90s was an instructor for clairvision in Awakening the Third Eye, and went on to do his own work also in Rosicrucianism and biogeometry and a number of other esoteric topics. And he also found that this term subtle bodybuilding was, one of the crucial terms that probably a number of mystery schools, spiritual traditions have, but may not explicitly, expound. But basically, maybe I have to start first by just saying, what are the subtle bodies? A lot of people might know a framework that they use. Some people might not consciously have a framework. So I'll just present two of them. One is that you can find with Rudolf Steiner and the Western esotericism. It's called a four subtle body model. That would be you have a physical body, which we all know is very important, kind of the most palpable here in the physical world. You also have the etheric body, which is now becoming much more accepted, particularly in the West with the study of chakras and channels and maybe Chinese medicine and acupuncture. So this is your chi body, your etheric, your prana body. Then you have your astral body, which is your emotional, mental body. Some people might know this term from such things as astral travel. And then finally, in the four-body model system, you have the ego with a capital E, which is more your higher self or your higher subtle bodies, your I am presence. So not your Freudian ego, the small E personality, but more this larger I am presence. And then I'll just mention the seven subtle body model system, which I also call the seven planes of nature. This was a model that I studied specifically with Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who started biogeometry. And you can see this in other systems, such as the Indian yogic system of the koshas. So you have the same two subtle bodies in the four-body model system, the physical and etheric. But instead of the astral, you have the emotional and mental body separated. So that's four. And then instead of the ego with a capital E, I am presence, it separates out into three bodies. The causal body, which is your karmic body, your spiritual body, which is more your soul information, the Akashic record information of your consciousness. And then finally your divine body, which is your non-dual self, the aspect of your consciousness that's unified with all consciousness and the creator or oneness or God, love, source, whichever term sort of fits that concept or experience. So that would be the seven subtle body model system. So just to directly answer your question, we all know, I think some people consciously, maybe all of us subconsciously, that we have very little time in the physical body. And usually we kind of hit the spiritual path consciously. Maybe some of us, maybe I think you could say we're lucky, hit it early, maybe in our teenage years, maybe in our 20s, 30s. But usually somewhere maybe starting in the 30s to 40s, it makes more sense to really start devoting, your time on the spiritual path, only because usually there's an impulse to kind of make your way in the world, kind of establish your personality self. And I think that's a healthy thing. If you start maybe the deconstruction of the ego, the personality, before it's actually formed, before maybe on a practical level, like you have a job, maybe you have a partner, maybe you have a family. It doesn't always have to be that way, of course. And then you start deconstructing that, there may not be the stability to do the spiritual path. So let's just say in this kind of typical example, you're somewhere in the mid-30s, 40s and onwards, and you're kind of now maybe you have the again, maybe it's luck, but let's say the capacity to spend both money and time on your spiritual path. And let's say, you have a very ideal life currently. So maybe we can live to 90 to 100. So that's 60 years. Of course, a number of those hours or years will not be spent on the spiritual path. So we kind of have to think about what, spiritual practices, healing practices we want to spend our time on. And the subtle body model system is a good concept to maybe help decide, because usually it's us who's deciding. I say that because, we would assume that to be the case. But I always think 500 years ago, if people believe in past lives, if we were also, again, lucky enough to be around this information, which, like spiritual inner information, again, which would even be, I think, more difficult in the past, like 500 years ago than it is now, although it would be there. Someone else might be deciding, what that information and those practices, we had available. Usually we might call that a teacher or a master, or if it was the Eastern system, like a guru. And that would have been a system well accepted within kind of the mystery schools or inner esoteric schools, let's say 500 years ago, if we were born then. Now that model's still in place. I don't know if many people, maybe, myself and people listening are necessarily in that model. We could be. And it's still a very valid, beneficial model. But I think a lot of people are on what's called the independent spiritual initiation path, where they're sort of ultimately making their own decisions. We're probably learning a number of different practices, a number of different healing modalities, a number of different spiritual inner traditions, all very authentic, and possibly some that may not be going exactly to the end. So there's this question of spiritual discernment, which we could talk about as a kind of a very important but allied topic. But back to this, kind of maybe to conclude this sort of initial introduction. So we need some way to evaluate what's effective and important in sort of this limited time frame that we have to invest our energy and effort and, consciousness in. And the essence of the subtle body model system is that we have non-physical bodies. In the 4-body model system, that would be the etheric, astral, and ego with a capital E, the I am presence. In the 7-body model system, it would be the etheric, emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and divine. And much like the idea of bodybuilding in the physical world, or building one's physical body, we can practice to build our subtle bodies, much like we might do an exercise, let's say for our bicep, and we would strengthen that bicep, make it more effective, or maybe like a ballerina. Maybe this would be even more like a complex, does thousands of pirouettes until it's automatic. So that's a coordination of many muscles. And you can see that in their physical structure of, someone who's a professional ballerina. They really have a certain body form, physical body form. In the same way, we can shape these non-physical bodies by our consciousness, by our spiritual practice, in a higher level, much like the difference between maybe bicep curls and the pirouette. There are certain inner alchemical practices that not just structure one or two like channels or chakras in these subtle bodies, but really coordinate many channels and chakras together, leading to really a highly complex, much more refined, subtle body. And the reason it's important to consciously identify and spend time practicing those, whichever tradition, and we can talk about different esoteric traditions that kind of fit that bill, or suggestions. Again, ones that we would ultimately be choosing ourselves than being told to do. So we would need to be evaluating what would be effective for us. Is that investment doesn't just stay in this life. So people believe that we have a consciousness that continues. The subtle bodies, the pattern will continue into other lifetimes and other states of being. So even if a person may not believe in a future physical lifetime, or may be choosing or thinking that they're not choosing to return physically, those subtle bodies are in the non-physical world. So whatever investment we put into the subtle bodies now, they do get carried on. And the way that might show up in a future lifetime, theoretically, is if a person chose to reincarnate physically, let's say 100 years from now, as a child, if they had really developed, let's say, the head, the heart, and the belly, like we're talking about, may come in with, high levels of clairvoyance, like when they're 7, kind of when they kind of come back onto consciousness, high levels of empathy or compassion, if their heart's, more developed, and, high levels of capacity to do things if their belly's developed. And that may have been us or you in this life, and that was probably because of development of those subtle bodies in other lifetimes.
Okay, I love this perspective that we can, in that way, cultivate our future incarnations, right? To be equipped or better equipped with psychic and other spiritual abilities. So this is all. Thank you for laying the ground like this, Jean. I was wondering actually before we started the conversation, I was wondering, is this all about building the subtle bodies, or is it bodybuilding for the subtle bodies? And I understand that it is the bodybuilding for the subtle bodies, as you described, this dedicated and intentional effort to develop our subtle bodies. So are there specific exercises that you can share? I'm sure that there are plenty. You mentioned the inner alchemical practices, so I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of practices, but are there some that you can share that are relevant to developing the subtle bodies at each of the 7 levels, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. And at any point, if you think, maybe we could pause and ask another question, I'll just sort of unpack a bit, if it gets a little long-winded. But that being said, maybe a couple of groundwork principles that people probably have understood, just to kind of round out this picture and to answer your question specifically about exercises at each of the subtle body levels that would be, that would kind of qualify or build those structures. One is first this concept of structure. It's also a term that was coined or kind of expounded in the Clairvision School in a book that's online for free called The Language to Map Consciousness. It's a very interesting book in terms of it's almost like a glossary of various words that can kind of fit various consciousness experiences. And once you have words to something, you can really begin to understand your experiences deeper. So, I've used this term unpack and pack thoughts. That also comes from that book, A Language to Map Consciousness. But they have a term called structure, has kind of 2 definitions. One's kind of very relevant, but both are relevant to what we're talking about here. So we have subtle body structures with a kind of a plural, and that would be like different channels and chakras. And let's just say we'll focus on this head center, kind of the center of your head, the heart center, and then your Hara center, which I used and you mentioned in the beginning. But people will probably know that as the belly center or the lower dantian also. So these are 3 astral anchor points, which we'll kind of maybe explain more, in the second half of the talk. But these are all structures in the subtle bodies that you could develop that are probably familiar to many people, and they probably may be already developing those. Then the second kind of definition is of the term structures or structure is the capacity to do something. So like a surgeon has the structure to do, let's say they're a heart surgeon, maybe a heart transplant, which someone else does not have the structure to do unless they've done that training. Whereas another person may have the structure to write a law brief because they're a lawyer, went to school and then maybe did 10, 15, 20 years of being a lawyer. So they have the structure, the capacity, you could say, to do that. So we are developing that capacity too. And you could say those imprints this capacity to do something, they probably also get carried on to other lifetimes, to your other, to your consciousness. It stays in your consciousness, maybe not in the exact form, but sort of like a type of consciousness memory, much like muscle memory for a certain sport or skill that we can have in this life. If we stop that skill and then return to it, we kind of have a muscle memory for that, a pattern of consciousness that can be filled in. So that could probably also does get carried over into future lifetimes. There was even the suggestion that if you're interested, like to become like a Sanskrit scholar in a future lifetime, I remember studying with Master Choco Kusui, who started pranic healing. He said, just start looking at a Sanskrit book now, so you could kind of imprint a certain even knowledge that would be carried over into the future, even if you're not going to use that or become experts in it right now, kind of get a head start. But that's just an anecdote. And so kind of back to now the question. So there are, so the second, besides this idea of structure, really one of the principles to build the subtle bodies is wherever you put your consciousness in your subtle body, particularly your etheric body, your astral body, which tends to have physical and etheric anchor points, which we'll talk about, these 3 astral anchor points. The etheric energy tends to accumulate at that structure and will tend to begin to, what they use, the term is crystallize or form or more develop that structure. So kind of back to this idea that people can kind of very much relate to using this bodybuilding term. If you wanted to build more shapely or strong or bigger biceps, you would do bicep curls, for example, whatever the scheme is in the reps and sets and weights. And over time, you would get stronger, and it would probably reflect in how the muscle either looks or functions. So in the same way, if you wanted to build the head center, and it has certain functions when it's more stronger, so to speak, when it's more crystallized, and I'll kind of explain what that term crystallized means. It doesn't really mean it forms like a crystal or forms hard, becomes hard in your subtle body. It's more that it becomes more matured and functional, might be the way to think of the term I'm using, crystallized. So if you spend 5 minutes a day putting your awareness in the center of your head, the etheric energies, the pranic energies follow your intention. So they will begin to accumulate in the center of your head when you're doing that. And that helps to crystallize or structure, that particular area. If you do that, every day for 30 days, so not speaking of future lifetimes, just in this lifetime, even earlier than that, maybe even in one sitting, but, maybe 7 days, 14 days, but by 30 days, some of these functions will start to come online for the head center. So you may, while you're kind of walking in the forest, you begin to become very relaxed, and now you're looking at the trees kind of in this defocused way, and all of a sudden you see this glow, this faint glow around the tree leaves. So, you've begun to see the etheric energies around the tree leaves, and that's kind of one of the functions that come online when the head centers are more developed. But I'll pause there. That's pretty much the principle, and then we can go over some of how, building the different, what exercises actually build the different subtle bodies, like in either the 4-body model system or 7-body model system.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the pause, because, I had a question. Is it as simple as just to hold the attention there? Or is there, do we need to bring some intention? Do we need to do something specific? Or is it really the very simple, which very often it is, after all, the most simple that is the most efficient and effective solution?
Yeah, it can be more than that. It could be a variation of that, but that is one of the strongest and most straightforward principles. Like if you get that idea, you can go quite far with subtle bodybuilding. I'll just say one example for that. Maybe already starting to give a practice, for these 3 astral anchors. and then what a variation of that might be. So the principle is wherever you put your awareness on in your subtle bodies, the etheric energies accumulate there and will build that center. So if you simply did a 15-minute practice, and for 5 minutes you put your awareness in the center of the head, for another 5 minutes you put your awareness at the heart center. So that would mean, you're just focused on that practice. When you start thinking about, this is getting boring, or I have to go do something after these 15 minutes, you catch yourself, you bring yourself back. Let's say you were at the heart at the time. So that would be, the practice. You kind of like whenever you go somewhere else, you bring it back to that center. And then for the last 5 minutes, you put it 4 finger widths below your navel, at the belly center. So if you just did that practice every day for, let's say, the rest of the year, those areas are going to be quite developed and functional. And we can talk more about, what comes online with the heart and the belly. Just to say, like with the heart, you may, let's say you're a mother or a father. You're a parent, and you walk in and your 14-year-old child is there, and without even all of a sudden you realize they're they may be having problems with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and they're not really saying anything. They just look like they're getting something to eat, and it's actually accurate when you find out later or something. And that's probably your heart center coming online. You don't see, with the heart center, you're not going to see like that glow around your daughter or your son or trees. That's more your head center. But what you do when the heart center is open and very receptive to emotional vibrations, also non-physical emotional vibrations, you might have picked that up by, let's say, subconscious physical cues through your vision. You can't deny that. There's a lot of that kind of information. But there's also a lot of non-physical emotional body cues, emotional level information that we can pick up. And that would be picked up a lot through the heart center. So you become much more attuned, empathetic, even without even being present to a person's physical body. Maybe we'll unpack the belly center a little later, but I'll kind of put a pin on that, like what kind of abilities come online. But that would be one practice, just simply with that one principle, kind of coming back to the answer to your question. But there could be more, just like the difference between just doing bicep curls and someone who's doing like a more complex movement, like even like a clean and snatch, in the Olympics. That's much more difficult lifting of a weight, or the pirouette, which is even much more complex coordination. So just to move it one level forward, you could, rather than just keeping your awareness somewhere, you could begin to move the energies within your body without moving your physical body. This is starting to be a principle that's used in internal alchemy. The first one is also part of internal alchemy, so to speak. But many people might know this meditation called a microcosmic orbit in Taoism. It's also part of Kriya Yoga. But just to give you an example, so I could move the etheric, spiritual energies from my crown, let's say down to my root chakra, through all the major chakras. So I could start by keeping my awareness at the top of my head. But rather than just keep staying there for 5 minutes, for example, I could then, like in a couple seconds, move my awareness to my forehead. So now it's a much more dynamic meditation. The chi has moved, or the etheric energies have moved from my crown to my forehead chakra. Then I could, in another 2 or 3 seconds, put my awareness in between my eyebrows, then to the tip of my tongue, then to my throat chakra, then to my heart chakra, solar plexus, navel, sex chakra, and then finally to the root chakra, the perineum. So let's say within 30 seconds or a minute, I've kind of directed the chi or the etheric energies to move from my crown through all those major chakras on my front channel down to my root center. So this is a much more dynamic, moving energy, and it will build the subtle bodies, also in a more kind of complex way than just keeping your awareness at a certain center for a longer time. Both could be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. And we might want to start with it looks like groundwork, really, the holding the awareness in each of the three, for let's say 5 minutes, each of the three centers looks like groundwork for me. So maybe that's where we begin, and maybe for a certain period of time, maybe 1 month, maybe until the end of the year, but already to start with 30 days and see where it takes us. And I suppose that through this, we then get clarity, receive guidance, or feel prompted to move on to maybe a more elaborate practice, and which one, such as the microcosmic practice that you've just described, right?
Yeah, exactly. And usually people are studying within some system where they're giving like a full guidelines, but usually that principle is, to even just start with one center and, someone who maybe, let's say just someone completely new to this, you ask them to put their awareness, at the heart center. They may not even be able to really feel anything, although something is happening even with the attempt, which is a very important concept to know. So they may, say, okay, I'm trying to put my awareness at the heart center, and usually, just to kind of explain why that might be, let's say they've been hurt emotionally as a child, like a trauma, so they've kind of not gone to the heart center because it will we kind of store those traumas in these centers. So if we were to put our awareness there, it would reactivate that memory stored there. So as a form of self-preservation, which of course is not the end technique or endpoint we'd like, a person tends to avoid putting awareness at their heart. So then they come to a class or initial class, in a spiritual tradition or practice or healing school, and they, start with putting your awareness at the heart. And it may take half a year, let's say, theoretically, in this case, just to start to say, yes, when I make the intention to put my awareness at the heart, I can actually feel something. So whatever this speed is, it doesn't really matter. But so that would be a groundwork practice, and then maybe, like you said, moving to this movement kind of practice, like the microcosmic orbit.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So more practices, specific practices. I mean, I feel we could spend the whole day, even few days, together and uncovering specific practices for each of the three centers that we're going to talk about, and the 7 planes of nature, right? So that it makes a whole complex system, I guess. So we need to be selective. So if you would select for us a few relevant, significant, useful exercises that are approachable for everyone.
Yeah, what was coming to mind is I did mention the first half of the microcosmic orbit, which is a Taoist practice. Like Montauk Chia, a very kind of well-known Taoist teacher currently, teaches the microcosmic. I think a lot of people learned it through him. Some other modern Taoist teachers, both Western as well as maybe from that tradition, from the countries China that started that, teach that. But it's also part of the Kriya Yoga system. People might know about the Kriya Yoga system through Paramahansa Yogananda, who started the Self-Realization Fellowship in the West, particularly here in the United States. They have a major headquarters in Encinitas, where I'm living very close to there, about an hour away, just to speak of it synchronistically. And that tradition is, I'll kind of explain. It kind of encapsulates. I'll explain this practice fully, and it kind of encapsulates a lot of the key principles we've been already talking about that people might know, people might not know. I just kind of was kind of reintroduced to this concept that I kind of had heard about kind of in a couple years ago. And I'll kind of just put a pin on this idea. I'm not saying exactly what it is right here. But speaking of that lineage, so, you see it in Taoism, but you also see it in India through this lineage. And the lineage comes through Babaji, through Lahiri Mahasaya, Sri Yukteswar, to Paramahansa Yogananda, through Paramahansa Hariharananda, and then, teachers who are authorized to kind of transmit that energy. So the first reason I say that is, if you learn this practice, which like as an action will look the same. It's almost like if I taught you how to do the squats, which is, with a barbell. It seems like you could learn that from anyone, and as long as you do the physical movement, you're pretty much doing it the same, whether it's this instructor or that instructor. And that's probably true. There's probably some subtle differences. But if you learn a spiritual practice, even though it's the same movement, the lineage of who you learned it from spiritually. This is a kind of a higher level concept of this subtle bodybuilding. The lineage of who you learned it through spiritually is a little bit like it's kind of like the thread in this analogy that you use to weave your subtle bodies with. If that makes sense. So maybe I'll have to just explain the practice and then mention how this works. So if you learn the microcosmic through a Taoist master, a Taoist teacher, and that's going to bring in a certain energy when you do the practice that will weave into your subtle bodies. And if you learned it, let's say, from the Kriya Yoga system through these Kriya Yoga masters, then that's going to bring in a certain quality of divine energy that gets woven into your subtle bodies when you do that practice. So anyways, to finish the practice, so I mentioned the front part where you come down from the crown to the perineum and at the root, and then you would move that energy from the root chakra to the coccyx. You put your awareness on the coccyx, and then let's say up to something called the Mingmen, which is like at the same level of the navel, but on your spine, then the back solar plexus, and then the heart, back heart center, back of the head, top of the head, and now you've returned. So you've done like a loop. And as you move your awareness to each of these centers, the chi follows your awareness. That's kind of the principle. Like if you wanted to move energy, you just put your awareness at the next point you want the energy to go, and it will just follow. So you don't have to push the energy there. You just go to the next point, and it sort of follows you, your awareness, the chi. So now what was interesting is that in Kriya Yoga, it's a much more, I would call, the term probably is just secretive teaching now, even, meaning I think there are kind of books out there that describe the Kriya Yoga practices. There's, I think, 6 levels, but that was probably not authorized. It was just someone who decided they would just publish the techniques without maybe the permission of the organization, knowing the organization. So you'd probably have to be in the organization to kind of learn about it. For example, the microcosmic orbit, this is just a little bit of a reflection on these esoteric teachings in the modern world. A lot of these are you could just buy a book, for $16. 500 years ago, they would be something that you kind of well hidden. You'd kind of have to be in the school. But now, without breaking any kind of rules within the school, they're just published. Same practice, but just much more open, and that's kind of the beauty of the times we live in. A lot of these practices are very available publicly. But that being said, what was in one of the teachings from the Kriya Yoga system is that if you do that rotation once, within the Kriya Yoga system, they teach that actually is the equivalent of a 1 year of living. So you basically have evolved yourself 1 year. one solar year by doing, bringing that energy down the front channel and up the back channel, so to speak. So you can really accelerate your evolution. It's hard to prove that scientifically, but let's say we just trust a bit that this is an interesting concept and maybe possibly true according to these Kriya Yoga masters, that, doing that alchemical practice of bringing, the energy down through the front channel and then back up through the back channel does something to your nervous system that's equivalent to living one solar year. Let's say we're just living one solar year. Maybe we're not moving the energies very dynamically like that. Just life creates a dynamism to move the energies. But when we really harness it and focus and know where to move the energy, it sounds simple, but unless you know what to do, you might not just intuit to do that movement, that you actually are accelerating yourself, 1 year. So if you're very dedicated in your practice, this is why these alchemical practice, I mentioned this idea, we don't have much time on the planet. It doesn't hit you when you're a teenager, but it might hit you, maybe later, that either by seeing other people who pass or recognizing just, how much time a human can live and how much time you can do in your spiritual practice, then, this practice actually might be worth the investment, because if you do a couple rotations every day, you're basically evolving your nervous system, if I were to use that, or just evolving your consciousness, the equivalent of a couple years, which could, even become like a couple lifetimes worth of subtle body consciousness evolution just within one lifetime. So that's where, this can be very helpful concept, but also these are very helpful, maybe even priceless practices. The only thing just to say, and then I'll pause, is, we have this beauty that I mentioned of being in a time where we're, many esoteric practices and teachings are very available. And, this was my experience too. It's almost like a glut of practices. Like I've taken so many trainings that, one, I'm not able to do all the practices, even if I could. So then you have to try to figure out which ones to do. That's why this subtle bodybuilding concept is helpful. And we can kind of say how to apply it specifically to choose a practice. And then two, you can miss how important the practice is. So I get this book for $16, and I'm new to energy work, but I'm, somewhat facile enough. Maybe I took one or two energy practices in this theoretical idea that if I read this microcosmic orbit, I could kind of figure it out. But you might not have the same context like in the past where someone could, where it may take you some time to actually be shown that practice. That kind of gives you some context. It also gives you the importance of what you're about to get, so to speak, because it looks so simple, but it's outside the context sometimes now in the modern times, because we could get it on the internet, we could get it on a book. And so I would call it an inner transmission might be missing. It's not something that another person gives. It's almost like, it's almost at the karmic level. It's like the causes and conditions that deliver that practice to you could either be very ideal, like you really understand, like, yes, actually in my bones, I understand this can actually accelerate my evolution by 1 year just by doing one rotation, versus I just read this, on the internet, looks really interesting. I kind of did it once, and then, you kind of move on because you kind of miss the jewel. It looks like a pebble. It looks like, because you have so many jewels around you that they start to turn into common stones. And I'm talking from my own personal experience. So I think that's also something that we are navigating in this modern spiritual milieu and practice time.
Yeah, I hear you. And what I'm seeing is that as there's this openness that all these practices are made available to everyone pretty much. They are accessible, right, openly, widely and openly, which is a huge benefit. The flip side of it, it seems to me, is that it leaves to us individually to bridge the gap, the gap of consciousness of what is this really about through our practice and experience, to discover what a teacher or a guru would have 500 years ago would have delivered to us. It leaves this responsibility to us individually, and then we do it or not, whether we um, put the effort, put the dedication, put the commitment to it, and also search for what is this, the meaning and the deeper effects of the practice. It's up to us to uncover this, right?
Yes, exactly. Like just as a one other example, there's a tradition like, and this kind of can unpack and answer our question, like what are some of the practices at the different subtle bodies? So, like at the divine dimension, any practices, and this is where people may have already, understood or maybe not, that are considered non-dual practices. So, like
Mhm.
in the Zen tradition or in Tibetan Buddhism, there's traditions called Dzogchen, Mahamudra. These are just terms people either may hear or have heard or will hear. Um, Maybe in the Christian contemplative tradition, it would be, meditating with God, like the ultimate source. So these practices, usually considered the highest level of a alchemical practice, are so simple when you're told them that you
Mhm.
may be wondering why you waited, 20 years to get, I'm just playing, but sometimes it is like that. Why you waited so long, kind of, I'm saying symbolically, at the feet of the master, so to speak, or like in our modern age would be like taking so many of the classes and so forth, just to get this simple transmission, which is basically like resting in your pure awareness. But again, like I was saying, if it's not in the context of maybe having waited that long, it doesn't
Mhm.
land. There's not the fertile ground for it to land. It's the
Mhm.
importance of it to land. But the technique itself sounds so almost like straightforward when you hear some of these non-dual practices. It's because if you do anything too complex, just to give you an idea, or just to kind of unpack it a little bit critically, if you're doing something very complex in a practice, it's probably not probably not non-dual.
Mhm.
It's probably
Mhm.
dual. It's probably
Right.
very
It gets
persistent
very
dual.
mental. Yeah. Mhm.
Right. And so
Exactly.
yeah, so
Mhm.
just to give
Mhm.
people an idea, I don't know if I exactly said what the practice is, but this general concept of resting in the divine, which is pure awareness, with a witness state. Now that's also very available, and I think again we may be missing the jewel. It's kind of turned into a semi-precious stone. I call it a pebble, but when you have so many jewels around, but yeah, so that would be a practice in the divine dimension.
Mhm. What I'm seeing is that it's pretty much up to us to reach out to our inner teacher somehow, our inner teacher, inner guru, and to work it out
Hmm.
in that way, who may lead us to one or a few or a whole selection of actual teachers or practitioners, but we can work whom we can work with to guide our path, like an inner teacher, inner guru, with whom we have a dedicated practice and relationship and um, commitment, as we would have with a physical guru, as we would have had in the past. Okay, so
Yeah.
all these practices are really catalysts, right? Catalysts for our spiritual development, is what I'm hearing. Are there other practices that you want to share now? Do you want to go in? There's so much. There's so much to share. We have to be selective on what we discuss today. But I'm sure that in the program that you're gonna offer and describe very soon, that you're gonna offer much more depth on each of these questions. Do you want to share more practices, or do you want to move into the three anchor points in the astral body?
Yeah. I'll just say something that was related. That I guess was inspired by just your insightful comment, and then we can move into the three anchor points of the astral body. And like you said, there's so it's kind of a rich topic to unpack. It could be a multi-hour kind of course or something of this nature. But I think you're right, in the sense that, they're finding our inner teacher. And speaking of past lives, many people might even remember, or we probably have done very high level, possibly esoteric practices in past lives, whether we remember them or not. That's probably why we're interested in listening to a talk like this for people who are listening. And, there was even this very interesting story of I think she was a Brooklyn, she described herself as a Brooklyn housewife, so I'm just kind of reiterating it. And she just started kind of a new age meditation, group with friends. And then she just started downloading these amazing meditations. She just thought she was making them up. Well, I kind of fast forward. She eventually, a Tibetan Lama, she must have met him, realized that she was downloading high-level Tibetan practices, and they identified her as a reincarnate Lama of a lineage. She was a lineage carrier, and these only 2 lineage carriers incarnate every cycle, and she was one of them. And they are able to carry the memory of the practice without having to be retaught them. Like if you've done them in the past, maybe someone reteaches and you can kind of do it faster. But she just remembered them fully, and now she has, she created the stupa in Sedona. If people have gone there and seen the stupa, she started a big Dharma center in Maryland, and was identified by a traditional Tibetan lineage as, a lineage carrier of that tradition. And so I'm not saying that we're all that, but we might have a fraction or some similarity. So like speaking of the inner guru, we may already have those practices within us, and we go to, like that book on the internet, or it just kind of reawakens a know-how that we already know. So just to kind of speak to that inner guru, inner teacher, inner inspiration, and not to underestimate, our current, what we have within our sort of Akashic records. So I just wanted to kind of dovetail on what you said, and then, we could talk about these three anchor points.
Yes. I was thinking the same, that some of us, some of the audience, some of the listeners, as you said, gathering around this topic, I'm sure that all of us have received teachings in past lives, and some were actually the teachers. So that totally resonates. And all of this is available to us, and is calling. I'm hearing even screaming for being tapped into, and I'm seeing what you refer to as all these gems, and that seem to turn into pebbles. They are shining bright, and they are calling for our attention. Maybe selectively, like this one, do this one. There's a path. There's our personal, individual path of unfolding, recovering, reclaiming our past experiences and putting them into action, putting them into service in this incarnation. So with that, let's discover the three anchor points and how can we develop them systematically.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of what we'll do, verbally, or what what I'll try, or we together try to do, is like you said, like a funnel. There's so many interesting and beneficial topics, subtopics within this concept of practices, spiritual traditions, alchemy. What to talk about, and this is exactly what I was just to kind of refer back to this challenge that we probably all have felt. This is kind of the way I would present it. Now I have all these practices, I have all these healing tools. Many people are probably in a similar boat that I'm, describing, or I am in. I've taken, this tradition, that tradition, and I couldn't even do all the practices in a day anymore. So how do I choose? So now, so that's the big wide funnel. So how do you funnel it down to something manageable and effective? So whether you do the three astral anchor points, I think it's a good model to think about. It could be a good place to focus on or start that I think many people do. And I have woven it into most of my classes. So some people here who have maybe taken things with me before, this is almost maybe like a review, but just to kind of say, or this might be new to people, is there's three areas in your physical body that are associated with your etheric astral body, and even can access these higher causal, spiritual, and divine bodies that you can evaluate your practices with, whether it's a more complex practice, like the pirouette type of analogy, or if it's just straight up squatting, which, that's like the best, one of the best leg exercises, even though it's very simple. Then you can kind of choose. But a good way to evaluate what you might need to work on is to look at these three astral anchor points. So the three astral anchor points, just a really quick review, is the head center, usually anchored right at the center of your head. People might know that as the pineal gland or pineal chakra, or they call it the cave of Brahma, because that's where the third ventricle is, which is where the cerebrospinal fluid is flowing. And then you have the heart center. So that the head center is for thinking, also higher clairvoyance. Then you have the heart center, that's kind of straightforward, that's for feeling. And then you have the lower dantian, or the hara center. It's anchored about 4 finger widths below the navel. So this is the willing or acting, the capacity to do things. Now, if you were to apply, a lot of people know the chakra system. These aren't chakras per se. Like the heart, people might think, well, that's a chakra. In this framework, they're more like fields of energy. So they're fed by the chakras. So like the head center, you could say, encompasses the crown, forehead, ajna being in between the eyebrows. The heart, you could say, incorporates like somewhat the throat, but maybe also the solar plexus and the heart chakra, like the front and back heart chakra. And then the hara would encompass the navel, sacral, and root chakra. So if you were interested in working on some of the chakras, according to this model, you could also just identify where they might fall in these 3 anchor points. Now, the idea here is we already come in with a lot of strengths. We also come in with weaknesses, and that's how you can decide, using this as a model, what practices should I be spending time on. And it's usually, at least you should prioritize some of your time on your weaknesses. So I'll just give you like a way to evaluate that. So people might already doing this, with what we're talking about. But, of these 3, which of them is your strong suit? Just to explain, maybe to describe them a little more, but people might already be able to, do that with this. Are you very empathic? Can you really tune into a person, again, like not even, like just from their Facebook photo, so to speak? You don't need to even be there. A lot of people who are readers, if you're kind of a clairvoyant reader, your heart chakra is probably maybe very open, particularly on the healing level, or a therapist, psychotherapist, or whether it be a healer, a physician, energy healer. So the heart center is usually very open, So that might be your strong suit. But I'll give you another example to maybe find out your weak suit. Let's just say in this theoretical person, but you can start a project, but you can't finish a project. So this may mean that, yes, I am empathic, but the will center, that belly center, will be kind of more on the weaker end. So that belly center is the capacity, like, you just can get things done, and particularly that, there's the last 20% of getting things done, which probably is very boring to like a person who doesn't like, where you just kind of, draw on the sort of almost physical energy, and you can, you just land the thing in the physical world, because even when it's like super boring or even super painful on some psychological or even physical level. So those people have very developed belly centers, whereas someone who might not be able to do that now, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, that belly center may be the area to work on. And just as a last way, just to kind of more fully explain, this is probably the last time we'll get to kind of cover this in this talk, is like the head center. So let's say you're highly clairvoyant. Let's say you can really plan things out. You're highly intelligent. Maybe you were very good at school, the way the school, was set up now, math, reading, arithmetic, and so forth. So to a high level, maybe you went to do that at a higher level in college or grad school. So some of these head centers at the mental level are developed, but also at the visionary level, you can see, maybe you can journey very well. You can see higher beings, that no one else can see, like angels, accurately, not just imaginatively. Then your head center is probably very well developed. And people who usually are in the outer world, like a CEO or a manager, they probably have, they're able to do that even if they believe or not believe in subtle bodies. If you look at them clairvoyantly or energetically, their head center is very developed. Like if your ajna is very developed, you can just tell people to do things and they do it. And whether they like to do it or not, you just center between the eyebrows. That you may have developed in another lifetime. You just happen to be very good, like managing people. So this would be a highly developed head center. So I'll pause here, but maybe maybe that people can do in the audience, if you wanted to see what practices to work on, is see which of those centers is your strong suit, and then more importantly, probably for practices, which is your weak suit. The one that you think is not as highly developed. That's probably where you're spending 50% or a little bit more of your these inner alchemy practices or energy practices you want on a daily basis or some regular basis to be focused on that weaker center.
Yeah, and I see a path of maturation where we start with our weakest center, bring it to level, then work on our second weakest, and then work on cultivating all three centers, like making sure that we bring attention and energy and development to all three centers and move forward at all three levels. Once we've kind of filled the gap for where we had weaknesses, then we need to maintain and cultivate all three, and thus the whole system. So this makes a good path that keeps us going, instead of taking the pedal and then, okay, I'm done with this, what now, to set ourselves on a whole journey that keeps going. So I love this. Yeah, I love this. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Well, you develop all three in a balanced way.
How about working with the Arcturians, working with other awakened spiritual beings? How can that help us develop our subtle bodies further?
So yeah, there's this book called Awakening in the Third Eye that I mentioned. Like Robert Gilbert was an instructor, that I learned this concept subtle bodybuilding from, that originated in the school Clair Vision. I do recommend that book on this subtle bodybuilding if people are wondering where to start. A lot of people maybe have heard me give a similar talk or topics, probably know this book. It was written by Samuel Sagan. And he had a very interesting quote there that I'm about to say about, working with higher beings, is that let's say you're doing one of these practices to build your, let's say, head center. You're putting your awareness in between your eyebrows for 5 minutes very lightly. And, what some of the sensations you might feel is a slight vibration. What he said is that vibration is actually a spiritual being. That's actually how they're showing up to you. Whether you kind of see we have pictures of angels and so forth, but actually that's the clothing around this subtle being that's actually helping to so-called chisel, symbolically carve develop your third eye. And that's a very interesting statement, that actually is a being that's helping to build your subtle bodies. And I've heard this is not just only in the clairvision school, like in pranic healing, another type of, healing or mystery, modern day mystery school. The same idea, like when you're developing your chakras and clairvoyance, there are so-called angelic beings that will be there during your practice that are, altering your subtle body structure. They're assisting you. It's not just you putting your awareness there, bringing energy, which was the principle. That's kind of our work. But then these spiritual beings, these angelic beings, are all around us. Even if you don't ask for them, they're going to start helping. But if you specifically ask for them before you do your practice, they usually call that invocation, like you did a beautiful one before we started to invite all the higher beings, then they're going to really help because you've given them permission. So like the Arcturians, just to answer your question, could fall under that category if someone was open to working with the Arcturians. They're not just going to bust in there and work with you, more out of respect for you. But if you ask for them to be there, just like these angelic beings would be there to help build your, let's say, head center for clairvoyance, they will be there. So it's kind of a very fascinating concept that people are open to that. And I say that because maybe someone listening, or maybe someone, a lot of people here are therapists, energy therapists, or, you're introducing this to like your kids or someone new. And then, if you start talking about angelic beings, they may not come back for a second. But they're fine with talking about energy and putting your awareness and building and so forth. But so it's very helpful if someone is open to that, which I think probably everyone here, the majority of people listening, are open to that or already actively working with spiritual beings. But they can accelerate this subtle body building process, almost like having a spiritual trainer, I guess would be the best analogy with the analogies we've been using.
Yeah, I love this, and it completes and complements and completes the image that was shown to me as just as we started actually. And when you describe this simple practice of holding the attention for 5 minutes in each of the three centers, head, heart, and hara, I was being shown the image of it's like going into a room, right? You have the room upstairs, maybe it's even the attic that's in the head, and just go 5 minutes in that room and meditate there, and then go downstairs to the room of the heart and downstairs to the room of the hara. Now, what I'm seeing is that it's going to each room, and there you meet your trainer and you work with whoever is the relevant, the appropriate higher being, whether it's Arcturians or other, whether I'm sensing that sometimes we may identify or get a sense of who specifically they are, and sometimes we don't, but when we need to know, we will know, and if we don't need to know, we won't know. We just dedicate to our practice and know that whenever we go into the room, the trainer is there, or a whole group of trainers and supporters, and there are cheerleaders as well, but there are also some who are gonna really catalyze our work as we bring ourselves into the room. I see that our essential task is to go to the room and to dedicate some time there, and then so much is being offered, so much is being complemented, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And just on this topic, because now this is just getting a little bit more deeper esoterically, it may be insightful for people, but there are basically two ideas I wanted to share on this. One is something called transferred clairvoyance. It was something that was shared by Robert Gilbert just in a kind of more like personal, like a class. So not sure it's anywhere written that I've found yet. But he said when he was studying with Samuel Sagan, Samuel Sagan remembered his past lives, like in Atlantis. He said, when I developed my third eye, it was in another lifetime. Samuel Sagan was saying this personally, I think, to this group that Robert Gilbert was in. And but it was during Atlantis. During that time, if you were consciously developing yourself, then someone of a higher subtle body development could just transfer their subtle bodies to you. He said it was this female initiate. Her name is Tayani. And I say those because he actually wrote this series of books called Atlantean Secrets. And I think he is czar in that series, in case people ever get that or have read that. And Tayani is one of his teachers. And he said that, now this is Samuel Scott in this life, that he developed most of his third eye during his Atlantean lives. But the way that he developed it was Tayani just kind of transferred her subtle bodies into his. So he didn't have to spend 10,000 hours, just to see an interesting meme out there about mastering. He didn't have to spend 10,000 hours meditating in between his eyebrows to develop his clairvoyance. But he said now we're in a different era of humanity. And if now he's speaking to that group here in the modern time, at this time, and Robert Gilbert was attending, you would have to, spend time yourself meditating, like this techniques I'm saying, to develop it. A higher being won't be able to transfer their subtle body development to yours, whether they're a human incarnated initiate or like an angelic being. That has a lot to do with maybe we have to develop our will capacity, and our subtle bodies are different. They're not as fluid as they were supposedly compared to the Atlantean time. But probably this is a better time than 20,000 years from now. So it's good to maybe just do it now, or in a couple lifetimes around this time. So that's one thing. So that exists. This kind of transference, whether we have that opportunity or not, it may still somewhat exist, or some portion of it may exist. But then there's this other phenomena, and this may help people. It's called I would call it borrowed clairvoyance. And the idea is this, that people might have experienced. Let's say a lot of people here are facilitators, or might be in the future, or do something of service. Doesn't have to be a class, but I'll just use a class. So you decide to hold a healing class for people, and your clairvoyance is, let's say it's good, but it's not at like a very super high level yet. Because you're in service to the divine to hold this class, your clairvoyance can get boosted during the time of service, or your healing capacity, or all these different spiritual gifts, and then it will end after your service period, like the class ends. And like during the class, you're super clairvoyant, more than you're usually, and so maybe so you could help more people, see what they need, and at a subtle level, and then when that class ends, you're out of your service role. you go back to your regular level, and then you'd have to just do your own practice to build it up. Now, people might have experienced that. I think I've experienced that. But what's more important is that it can happen, and like, how is that happening? That's really what's more relevant to our discussion here. So if we were to kind of deconstruct it a bit, and this might help our practice now and like working with spiritual beings, so somehow they're able to change our subtle bodies temporarily, these higher beings, so that we can kind of get that boosted, what I call borrowed clairvoyance, and then come back. So that big boost, of course, maybe because we're in the service role, maybe we have a lot of opportunity to do that or not. But that's what the role of the spiritual beings can do in our daily practice. Not that they will probably boost us to some level that, is very, a couple of quantum levels higher than we are, but they can change our subtle bodies. So it is, if you're open to it and you want to work with spiritual beings, maybe like you did the invocation before we started, which maybe, is a way that we may have brought in more information than we could in the talk, by having those beings there consciously. In the same way, before you do these practices, that we talk about, or you may be doing practices currently, you do an invocation to those beings you really work well with. They can really, because the subtle bodies are malleable enough to, boost yourself a couple echelons if appropriate, in that service role. They can really, shift your subtle bodies to the maximum degree and make your practice sessions maximal.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. What I'm hearing is there's really an invitation to all of us to, we can ask, right? Whether or not the transferred clairvoyance is really available or not, we can ask for it. And even if it's bits and pieces, we're happy to receive them. What I'm sensing as for the borrowed clairvoyance is it seems to me like a form of entrainment that when we come into session mode or into dedicated service work, and we, through the invocation or through our intention and our dedication, we call on the higher beings, then through their presence, we get by entrainment, we get the upgrade, right? So that's behind this. There's really an invitation to all of us to really not just open ourselves to the collaboration with those beings, but to maybe to be more intentional and more willing, and to count on them as well, to count on them.
Yeah, exactly. I've been kind of sharing this very light-hearted idea. I heard it through a teacher. His name is Andrew Holacek. He teaches a lot about the Tibetan bardos, but he had met Deva Premal, which people might know. She's a beautiful singer of mantras and so forth. And she was saying that, there are a lot of unemployed angels. There's these angels that are just waiting to help for us. They won't help us unless we ask for the help. So maybe because we are very focused in the material world, not maybe the group listening, but just in general on the planet. Some may not believe in a spiritual world, so then they would never ask. So there's a lot of this angelic help that never gets accessed. And Samuel Sagan had a very similar vision too. That vision was these angelic beings are like scanning the earth, and then they see one flame, like that's, but all the other flames are basically out cold, and this one flame is this person meditating with very heartfelt intention, who's opening themselves up. So they have one opportunity to pour all their spiritual light into this, one person who has the open flame. Of course, there's more than that. But the idea is that there's not many open spiritual lights on the planet. We tend to be maybe in a group setting, that's geared to having a lot of open flames. But if you spread it over all the planet, maybe times have changed too, of course, but and that's a great movement. But the angels are looking to pour their spiritual light into people who are really open to it. And if you reflect, that might be actually a true statement when you look at the entire population of the Earth. Not within our maybe practice circles or circles we kind of gravitate to. But so it's an interesting point.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, wow, so much. There's a sense of upgrading, right? Wherever we are with our practices, upgrading and turning on the volume, the intensity, the dedication, the commitment, and really getting to it. Okay. Shall we take a few live callers? Are you up to it, Jean? And then we'll discover your special offer, how you're here to support us with developing our three anchor points of the head, the heart, and the hara.
Oh yeah, that sounds great. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, and then later we'll go to the Q&A. We have so many requests, but we're gonna start with live callers. We're gonna go to take Shari's request. Hello, Shari. Hi, Shari. You're on the line. Okay, you're muted. Don't unmute yourself. Just you're on the line now, Shari. Hello.
Oh, can you hear me?
Hi. Yes. Hello. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jean. So I have issues in all three of these energy centers, but I would say primarily depression and chronic fatigue is lower, depression is the upper. So I would love any kind of mini healing or anything at all that seems appropriate. I'd be very grateful.
Oh yeah, thanks, Sharon. Yeah. Why don't we do, I didn't focus on this concept, but we'll use an Arcturian frequency. It's called the Arcturian Metatron Melchizedek Mandala healing frequency. And we'll do it for you and also everyone listening, whether now, live, or on the recording, to clear the one or two major blocks in any of these three centers, and that can help, to start that healing process that you're requesting. Does that sound good?
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. So you can just relax and just notice what you feel. We're activating the Arcturian Metatron Melchizedek Mandala healing frequency. And the intention is to clear any major patterns, maybe even just one pattern that may be inhibiting or blocking one of our three astral anchor points, either the head, the heart, or the belly region. Frequencies are continuing to deepen this process. Great. And the energies ended there, and you can come back to your physical body and snap your fingers. How do you feel?
You there, Sherry?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome back. How are you feeling?
Thank you. I felt the energy going down my central column. I could it left the head area quickly, which was very lovely, and I could feel some resistance at the heart, but it was going through. And it sort of all got piled up around the lower dantian, so I think I need to do a lot more releasing down there right now. But it was very, very lovely, and I could feel the movement. I'm very grateful. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for bringing this for yourself and for everyone. Beautiful. Blessings. Okay, let's go to Uxbridge with Cindy. I'm unmuting you, Cindy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you,
Hi,
Jean.
Cindy.
Hi.
Welcome. Hi.
Thank you. It's
Hi.
been fascinating. Thank you so much for this opportunity that you're bringing forward. It's fantastic. So thank you. I'm really not even sure what area to focus on but I am feeling that there's I have what I call a stuttered breath. Sometimes I feel a lot of pressure to do. And so I would just request the Arcturian healing for whatever's surrounding that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a frequency called Arcturian high frequency light, kind of an advanced frequency. I think, it raises our vibration. It can, clear the pattern that you're mentioning, and start that process. And does that sound good?
That sounds fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, and of course, everyone listening now or to the recording also receiving that energy, and you can make your intention whatever uniquely you like, or just let the intelligence find where it needs to live. Okay, so we're starting with the Arcturian high frequency light at the physical, etheric, emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and divine level. Continuing to deepen the experience and exposure to the Arcturian high frequency light healing energy. Yeah, and the energies ended there. You can come back to your physical body now.
All right.
And stop busy.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sophie.
Blessings.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, we'll come back to take a few more requests. The good thing is everybody is being served by each of the requests, and everybody is also going to be served by the transmission you're going to offer towards the end, Jean, the enhancing the three anchors of the astral body. That's going to be for everyone all at once. For now, I'd like to discover, for everyone to discover the exclusive package you've created, the Arcturian Astral Anchors Transmissions, Subtle Body Building through the three sacred centers. We'd love to hear all about it. So for everyone to follow, go to gracefulconnections.com/Gene5. That's gracefulconnections.com with two L's in graceful, as in full of grace, /Gene5, GENE digit 5. If you're on the webcast, you have a button and a link. You can click there to get on the page. If you're on the replay, just scroll down the page and discover Jean's special offer. Jean, please reveal what you've created for our audience with this package.
Yeah, this is called the Arcturian Astral Anchors Transmissions. It's a live event. You can also do it through the recordings, on your own schedule. But it's not something pre-recorded. We tend to work with the group field, that's attracted or drawn to this, whether that's past, present, or future, and then, or parallel, even dimension. And then kind of meet, like what we're unpacking in this very last piece of discussion on the spiritual beings or spiritual energy. We create a group field to connect with a group of spiritual beings that we invoke. That would include everyone's, God, of course, the divine, and then their guides and teachers, and then the Arcturians. Of course, if you want to connect to the Arcturians, they're there. If you just want to work kind of with your guides and teachers during the session, then that's also available and proper to the sessions. So we're kind of accelerating our development. So each session, works on one of these three astral anchors that we talked about. Universally, these are areas that we want to develop. So we have a 45-minute transmission that's more to take wherever you are in that current development and boost it higher. The framework might seem familiar to people, particularly maybe if you've done sessions together with myself, but the timing is different. We're kind of connecting with this living energy of the higher being. So wherever you are, they kind of take you to the next level in terms of the transmissions. It's a little bit like laying down the scaffolding if you're building a building. Then the second half is more like once the scaffolding is laid down, then someone kind of has to put in the cement. It's a little bit like the hard work portion, the active portion. So the meditation that we do is a little bit like having an actual practice that you can do to build those centers. I try to incorporate not just, although you could just put your awareness at those centers, but some new practices, usually drawing from different traditions, that if you've already been doing that kind of practice, you might make a variation to it, or work on a certain chakra channel, let's say when we just focus on the head, or focusing on the heart, or focusing on the belly. So by the end of the three sessions, you have a fairly good download of the different centers where you can build on. And then if you have your own practices already in place for these three centers or one that you're working on, you can build on what was downloaded in the transmissions, or you can learn new ones that we do in the second half. So that's sort of the essence of the offering.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yeah. And just one precision or maybe confirmation for each of the three centers. So in each of the three sessions, you work on the development of all the 7 layers, right? All the 7 planes.
Exactly. Yes. All 7 planes: physical, etheric, emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and divine, are being informed and worked with. Yes.
for each center. So wow,
Yes.
it's a very deep and intensive. It's gonna be like really an intensive 3 days. And I love, as you said, that it works from wherever we are, which means also that, well, we're gonna work with it on the live session or on the replay, right? But at the moment it's happening, but it's also becoming a set of tools, more than tools. It's becoming a set that we can keep working on, because the Arcturian transmissions, as we grow, or we can return maybe 6 months from now and return back to it. And we've developed the 3 centers through our practices, and then we meet again with the Arcturians and they meet us at a higher level, so we can keep working with this. So it's not just a one-off. It's really something that is gonna support us on an ongoing journey. What I'm perceiving, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just to emphasize what you just said, like because you get the recordings like as a energetic tool. Let's say you revisit, you do your practices, you download, and then you revisit it, a month later, 3 months later. Then you play those transmission recordings again. So now you're interacting with a living energy field held by those higher beings. And so they're downloading you a new set of information, not what you downloaded, previously in the first iteration. So every time you connect again through the transmissions, and of course, when you do your practice, your subtle bodies are at a different condition, different level. You're going to be, boosted where you currently are. So you can continue to use it as a kind of a training tool or program.
Wonderful. Okay, so thank you for creating this program and offering this. It is very generously priced, and there's also a PayPal for payment option available in many countries. And stay with us all the way, because we're going to be sharing a special announcement soon that you will want to hear as well. Thank you for this program, Jean. It's an intensive, very structured, very systematic, and it's really our, subtle bodybuilding boot camp, we can say, I guess. And then from there, we will keep working on each of these 3 centers at all the 7 layers. So very, very profound. Let's go back to take a few more questions and requests. I'd like to take the request in the Q&A from Lisa in Cambridge, because I believe this one may be also of interest to many who are listening. Lisa says, I would love to ask for your support in helping me ground my physical body so that I can hold and be open to increase of subtle energies. And this so I can be balanced and more prepared to serve the greater good. So really the ability to be grounded and anchored and to receive the energies in our body, right? To receive and embody.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just to kind of double click on that, probably everyone here is familiar with receiving very higher dimensional frequencies, energies, whether angelic or star or whichever lineage you're connecting to. And then really the second half, that's the first half of the equation. The second half is really to bring it here into the physical, integrate it, make it usable, and not just stay in our subtle body, the higher subtle bodies. So is it Elizabeth? What Elizabeth was saying is kind of very appropriate. And so we're going to use a frequency called Arcturian brain balancing. It's actually for the nervous system, and that's a big part of integrating these higher frequency energies into our physical. Is it has to come through our actual physical nervous system. So this is a specialized Arcturian healing method frequency for the nervous system. We'll have that intention to integrate any higher dimensional energies. Okay. We're starting. We're starting with the Arcturian brain balancing. We're continuing to deepen the Arcturian brain balancing. Okay. And that completes the exposure to the Arcturian brain balancing with the intention to integrate our 7 subtle bodies.
Thank you. Thank you. That felt very delightful. Support to the nervous system is always very welcome. So thank you for that. And thank you, Lisa, for bringing this for everyone. Thank you. Blessings. Okay, let's take the request from Marianne in Vancouver, who is, as many others as well. So let's focus on this. Experiencing a lot of grief and lots of changes, letting go of people, ways of life, community. So if you can offer something to support with grief.
Yes. Yeah, there's actually a frequency. It was in one of the latest Arcturian levels, but it combines kind of like this shamanic idea of traveling to a sacred site to receive its medicine. So we did a tour to the Inca Trail, and part of that was an addition of the Salcantay mountain. So we connected there physically to this mountain healing medicine or energy combined with the Arcturian energy. So this frequency we're about to use is called the Arcturian Salcantay healing frequency. It can be used for all levels of healing. So we'll work with Marianne and others. You can choose your intention, but we'll also work specifically with the grief. Okay.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So we're starting with the Arcturian Salcantay healing frequency. Continuing to channel the Arcturian Salcantay healing frequency. looking to deepen the Arcturian salt and tie healing frequency. And that completes the exposure to that energy.
Thank you. That felt very. I felt like a a sigh of relief in the heart, in many hearts. You know, like when you experience a lot of tension and suddenly, if suddenly the tension dissolves and suddenly you can have this sigh of relief. So that felt very palpable. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, well, I wish we had the whole day, but we don't. So we have to compose a sort of mosaic of different components to our time together. So before we get to our special announcement and then move on to our final process experience, enhancing the three anchors of the astral body, I want to wrap up Jean's special offer, the Arcturian Astral Anchors Transmissions, 3 gatherings, 3 live group events, and the replays. It's happening on the 7th, 8th, and 9th of June. And you can work with the replays. That's what I usually do. And I can totally confirm that if you organize yourself properly, like you can recreate the atmosphere and the experience of a live call, and you get exactly the same experience and outcomes and benefits. So developing all the 7 subtle body levels for the head center on the first day, heart center on the second day, and the hara center on the third day. You have all the details on gracefulconnections.com/Gene5. If you're on the webcast, you have a button and the link, click there. If you're on the replay, just scroll down the page and discover all the details and join Jean's special offer. For now, we have also a special announcement. Jean is generously offering a fast action bonus for any purchases by Sunday, June the 1st at midnight Pacific. Jean, please tell us about your fast action bonus, the Arcturian Healer's Clairvoyance Training.
Yeah. I was just, some people might know, I was just in Hawaii holding some live and also online classes. We had a new class, so sort of just freshly downloaded, called Arcturian Healer Clairvoyance Training. You could say it's a specialized version of the subtle body building, particularly around this spiritual skill of clairvoyance. And that would not only include what I was describing about seeing etheric energies, but all the clairs, all the higher sense perceptions of, subtle information. So like clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, what we might call working with pack thoughts or telepathy. And so we go over the concept more specifically. And then there's a very unique 45-minute download from the Arcturians to build all of the 7 subtle bodies' ability to, because at each of the 7 subtle bodies we receive what we might call subtle information. We're always doing that. The capacity is to develop the structure, the subtle bodies to be able to make that information more conscious. So we're always receiving the etheric energies of plants, but it may just be at a subconscious level. It doesn't register in our conscious mind. So when you develop that clairvoyance or that clair, you're taking that subtle information that you're always receiving and making it more aware. So I said, the heart of this program is that specific download from the Arcturians to build, at each of the levels. So just to kind of explain one other level. So some people can develop the capacity to receive causal information consciously So this would be like how karmic conditions, influences, causes, and conditions are leading to a certain experience or a certain effect. So we may not really consciously be aware of all of those, all that information. A lot of it is coming from past lives and past lives of other people and the environment. So if you become more, even slightly more aware of that consciously, that would be building a clairvoyance at the causal level. So the transmission helps to build all of the 7 subtle body receptors for that type of specific information at that level. And then finally, at the end of that training, we go over a very specific practice that also works with 3 centers, but to build clairvoyance, and it includes a breathing practice to help boost those centers.
Wonderful, and it's a brand new offering, recording and training. So with all the most recent technologies, so to speak, subtle technologies made available. So that's really a very precious bonus. So I hope everyone will really make the best of this opportunity. The fast action bonus expires on Sunday, June 1st at midnight Pacific. Thank you for adding this, Jean, to the package. It's like, I love how it offers us the ability to be very dedicated to that aspect, working on all the 7 layers, all the 7 subtle bodies, specifically for the development of our clair senses. And I know that's something we always want. Wherever we are on the development of our clair senses, we always want to keep developing them or to start developing them. So that's really a very precious addition. Thank you, Jean. And now, the cherry on the cake, so to speak, of our special time together today with Jean. Jean is going to offer a transmission of Arcturian frequencies, enhancing the 3 anchors of the astral body to rapidly open and develop the head, heart, and hara centers. So, Jean, is this a sample, like a preview of the full transmissions that will take place in 2 weeks from now, take place with the Arcturian Astral Anchors transmission?
Yes, exactly. This would be like a fractal emanation of, like you said, a sample of that kind of energies and information the Arcturians will kind of provide or be downloading in the special offer.
So it's like we're planting the seeds today already for that future greater and deeper transmission, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, if people just use things at this level, it will maximize your development of these 3 centers.
Perfect. And since we're on the new moon, it's a perfect time to plant the seeds. So whether everyone is listening now or later, even outside the new moon window, the seeds are planted right there in those new moon energies. So very, very auspicious, very supportive. So, Jean, we are ready. Thank you.
Yeah. This is the Arcturian 3 Astral Anchors transmission. Will be about 5 minutes. So we're formally beginning the transmission now. If you like, you could lightly place your awareness in the center of your head as the transmission is emphasizing, downloading the patterns for the head center. Now we're downloading the patterns for the heart center. You'd like to lightly place your awareness at the heart. Continuing with the heart center. Now the energies and transmission is working to lay down the patterns at our belly region. You can lightly put your awareness inside your body, 4-finger width below the navel. Continuing with the work at the belly region or heart. And that completes the transmission. You can gently but firmly come back to your physical body now, moving your fingers and your toes, coming completely back to your physical body now. And when you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and snap your fingers.
Thank you. Thank you. I love it. I love that as much as in the full transmission, which, by the way, we experienced 1 or 2 minutes for each center. Imagine 45 minutes for each center, how where it's going to take you and how profound it's going to be. But I love how in this fractal, as you said, and in this planting of the seeds, we get to experience all the three centers being supported and uplifted, and there's a sense of wholeness that comes from it, of the whole system is being attended to. So that feels really, really wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Arcturians. Let's take a moment now to return to the awareness of the orb of grace surrounding us, allowing it to remain there, holding us, holding all that we have discovered, experienced, received today, or that we're not even yet aware we have received, allowing it to sink in, to settle in, as we are held in the orb of grace for as long as it serves our highest good, our evolution, and the highest good of all. And I'm closing now by offering my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you, whether you're present live or on the replay. Thank you for joining us today, for answering yes to the calling of grace. and the calling to upgrade your subtle body through the 3 sacred anchor points, gaining power to realize your vision while supporting others with masterful skills. Infinite gratitude to our brilliant expert, Jean Ang. Thank you for all the wisdom, the guidance, the sacred offerings you have gifted us today. Jean, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Sophie. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, thank you. Gratitude to the Orb of Grace for providing a safe, sacred sanctuary for our exploration today. And gratitude for all the grace we are blessed with at every moment. Whether we're aware of it or not, grace offers all the nourishment, the nurturing, the healing, and the insights we open our hearts to receive. Gratitude to our higher selves and all the higher beings, the Arcturians, of course, and all the higher beings who guide, support, and protect us, and gratitude to the divine presence that flows through all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Until we meet again very soon, may many graceful blessings shower upon us all. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jean, and goodbye now.
Bye. Thanks.